I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. Welcome back to the show, Rick. And where are you talking to us from this time around?
Well, I'm in Berkeley. I flew out here from, I'm living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida now, South Florida, but I'm visiting friends in the Bay Area, and this is always a great week in the Bay Area because they have the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival and I think Navy Fleet Week, if I'm not mistaken. So things are really jumping here, Jim.
Do the Blue Angels perform during Fleet Week?
Typically they do, and I'm not sure what their schedule is, but it's a big event, and I'm guessing they'll be there.
Yeah, because I know with all the cutbacks, they rarely come to Canada anymore. They used to be a staple of our air shows. I didn't manage to get to the last Abbotsford International Air Show, so I don't know if they were here, but they always put on a great show. Rick, what kind of things are you seeing in the aircraft sector?
It's amazing. You know, you look at Boeing on a chart, and the flight path just it points toward the heavens, you know. And when I get all over the bull market and that kind of mood where I'm saying any day now this thing's going to crash, I look at Boeing, and the stock, even after it makes these parabolic leaps, it only consolidates in some shallow way, like it's ready to take another leap up. So, you know, Boeing is very much a brick and mortar company. They make real things for sure. And so it's not some flibberty gibbet digital company like Uber that at one point was sporting a $60 billion valuation. You know, whatever the valuation of Boeing is, it represents a lot of capital, a lot of plant. So I'm pretty impressed with Boeing, and I guess if you're going to extrapolate reasons for the stock's amazing performance, and it seems to be outperforming even the Bay Area digital stocks, but I guess it suggests that an emerging global middle class is going to be a really fat market for Boeing to cater to. And when you think of all the countries in this world that are just on the cusp of aspiring to own an air fleet, you can see where Boeing would be a prime beneficiary.
Now, of course, there is a bit of a war of words between Canada and Boeing. Boeing filed a complaint against Bombardier, even though their C-Series aircraft is smaller than anything Boeing makes, and Boeing managed to get the U.S. Department of Commerce to slap a 225% tariff on Bombardier aircraft, the excuse being, well, they're subsidized by the government. Of course, it was a bailout. And didn't the U.S. government bail out a number of companies and banks not that long ago?
Yeah, that struck me as really, that's dirty pool. Bombardier put out, it was sort of a bet the ranch thing. And here you're right, the tariff is somewhere, it's 220 something %. And, it really makes that aircraft unsaleable in the U.S. But when you kind of examine the money trail and try to figure out what has been subsidized, I guess the U.S. tries to keep pretty clean with respect to Boeing, but you can never really detach the national interest. It's certainly in America's interest to have a strong producers of aircraft, and there's always going to be some implicit subsidies. But to go after the Canadian company with the meat axe as they've done strikes me as it's a little bit vicious.
Well, Prime Minister Trudeau pointed out Canada is in the market for brand new jet fighters. They were going to get a number of Super Hornets made by Boeing, but the world is awash with lots of great jet fighters. Who said we had to buy from Boeing?
Right, that's true. I mean, you and I can't go out and buy those armaments, but boy, there's great weaponry out there, whether it's land, sea, or air.
Other sectors right now, the hurricanes, I'm sure, really helped out the auto people.
It helped out everybody. When you see, the numbers economic numbers have skewed to suggest that the Keynesian effect is already there with respect to rebuilding Houston and Florida, and who knows, they may even rebuild Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands at some point. But it's definitely a Keynesian stimulus, and I think we talked about this before, but no one's ever gone wrong buying into some disasters such as the hurricanes created.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after the break.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario, with grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork will commence later this year. Please visit our website at rmroyalty.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, does it look like the U.S. might take off or ease the tariffs on Canadian softwood because they have to rebuild so much?
I think that makes sense. The U.S. market can only supply so much timber, and Canada's always going to be our main supplier. So it seems like almost a given that there'll be an easement there.
What other areas do you think are going to be really hot? I see copper has it eased back below $3, and now it's jumped back over $3. Is that going to still continue to be a hot commodity?
I can't understand copper for the life of me. It's usually a pretty good indicator that real brick and mortar stuff is starting to cook, that there's a lot of construction and that growth in manufacturing is strong, but I don't know. It feels to me like copper is a little bit ahead of that, and the negative story that would counterbalance that is that a lot of the copper goes toward telecommunications infrastructure, and of course these days that doesn't happen simply because telecommunications is primarily digital. But I guess there are just other uses of copper in basic industry that would more than offset that. But from my point of view, copper looks stronger than I can explain.
Well, you do have thousands of miles of power lines that were knocked down by all the hurricanes, and maybe this time they'll put some of them underground so they don't get knocked down again.
Well, you ought to write someone with that idea, Jim. It sounds like a good one.
Well, just in my own neighborhood in Vancouver, the one side of the street has buried power lines. Our power doesn't go out during a windstorm. The guys across the street, they're blacked out for a couple of days.
Well, it's expensive to get them underground, and of course, when you have problems underground, it's expensive to repair them as well. On the other hand, you look at a real copper cable disaster area like Puerto Rico, and there's just all these electrical wires, really thick wires, just kind of wrangling or dangling, flopping around like snakes on the road. So I guess whatever the expense, it's probably going to work out to be better in the long haul to put them underground, as you're suggesting.
Right, and of course communications, fiber optic cable doesn't carry electricity all that well because it's light.
Well, it carries everything else though, and especially everything from voice and data to all their laser switches for all this data that do incredible things, and fiber optic. We should think of it as something more than just the voice and data that we have in our homes.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Ackerman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Ackerman's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at ackermanresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're chatting with Rick Ackerman. Rick, what's your point of view on gold? It seems to keep slipping down a little bit more every day. Is it going to perk up soon?
Well, it seems like the whole forecasting world's sort of coming around to the idea that maybe the dollar has bottomed. It always takes a pretty good rally to convince the laggards that maybe they've been wrong or they're missing the turn. Ordinarily, you would expect that to put some pressure on gold, but I don't think so. I think that we're going into some watershed change, which would disfavor stocks and perhaps favor bonds. I think the usual calculation that the strong dollar means weak or soft gold is going to be wrong. So and also, we've seen some of these the gold stocks are pretty resilient. They seem to be getting out ahead of the physical metal prices, and that's a bullish sign. But from my point of view, the most bullish thing that's happened in gold was that before it started selling off, the high that the gold futures made back in the second week of September exceeded the election night high, and I think that's very significant. It really puts the pretty nasty correction. We've seen COMEX gold futures come down from 1360 and change to 1270 and change, come off about $90. But I see that really, again, as corrective simply because the high exceeded that very crucial resistance that is implied by the November election peak.
People for the last few weeks have been saying, September's going to be bad. We're going to have a market downturn on the stock markets. Now they're saying October, yet they keep climbing right now. What happened to this major correction?
It's pretty amazing. You've got like a 33-month cycle, and you've got the decennial, the year 7 of every decade is particularly nasty. And, when you look at the stock market over August, September, October, it's been a terrible period. But, so far, we haven't had anything in the way of, weakness surface. So if the October effect is going to be there at all, and it's really not just what you remember of it, like the October 1987 crash and a couple of others, of course the 1929 crash. October definitely has some frightening associations, but we're already a week into October, and there's not even a sign. On the other hand, there is such complacency here. The market goes higher, and nobody really seems worried. That's reflected in the fact that the VIX and VXX, some of these volatility indicators, they are crashing. I mean, they are in Marianas Trench holes. They're breaking new record lows on a weekly basis. So what that suggests is that everybody is so comfortable with the trend, and you might say that things are just sort of quiet out there. There's a quiet expectation that the next day will bring higher stock prices, and I think it's so ingrained that you have to be a little bit of a contrarian here and say it's just scary as hell. John Hussman of Hussman Econometrics just put out by his metrics, which are relatively sophisticated, the fact that this is the most overvalued market in human civilization, or in Western civilization. It never has the market been more overvalued, and never has this come at a time when there was such complacency as reflected in this sinking VIX and VXX. So that's another thing that may add up in October, but we've only got 3 more weeks.
Yeah, and of course now we have robots doing most of our trading. I don't know if they have much of a sense of history. They certainly have no sense of risk.
I've got to get me one of those robots, Jim. I could sleep in the morning while it sits there at my desk and makes me money.
Well, of course, artificial intelligence is the wave of the future, and I have a guest now that I talked to about artificial intelligence. I said, are they good or evil? And he said, well, they have no moral standard. And when one of the Facebook, I believe, tried to have an artificial intelligence model, and people taught it how to be evil, how to do bad things. So it's just like your kids. What are they taught?
Well, we've certainly taught them the AI to be pretty stupid. When you look at AI at a very basic level, voice recognition is the artificial intelligence that I use and I guess you could say confront each day in the form of saying things into my Android phone that I hope will come out in some semblance of clarity, but it doesn't. Voice recognition software is in the dark ages. It's so bad, it's laughable. And, so when I hear these AI guys talk about how AI is the future, I'm thinking, well, if you guys can't even get voice recognition software to type a comma when I say the word comma, then, I'm not that hopeful about the future of it.
Well, also, autonomous cars rely a lot on the lines on the road. Well, I've been on old roads where there are no lines, there's no shoulder markings, there's no center markings, or there's new road construction where there's both the old lines in the road and the new ones. Well, which one is your robot car going to follow?
Well, we all have that sense of foreboding. We're reading about how robots are, the cars are driving themselves, and we're seeing these experimental vehicles in places like Pittsburgh, and we're reading about how some driverless car made it from, Bangor, Maine to Tijuana or something. But each of us has, as you just suggested, something in our heads in the way of a question like, how would my robot car handle this situation? And I think we're way ahead of ourselves on that. There's a lot of hubris about self-driving cars, but for one, we have to make the current fleet has to go out of service, and that's going to take a long, long time because I'm driving a car, a Lexus, that'll be 18 years old and it just won't die. So in order for everybody for all the cars that are on the road now to die a natural death, it's going to take 20 to 30 years. So what happens, I think the whole idea of driverless cars will work better if all cars are driverless, but it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. We have to get to that point, and I think as long as there's like 30% driverless and 70% human operated, things are always going to be a little screwed up. So these guys that are all gung-ho on robot-driven cars, they're sort of imagining the roads where all of the cars are driven, by robots. And I do think that will work, but I have trouble just imagining how we're going to get there.
And a lot of, they said they don't handle heavy rain or snow very well either because, again, that obscures landmarks, stop signs and stuff, whereas you may know that road really well and you're willing to take the chance that nobody else is stupid enough to drive in that snowstorm when you're out in it.
And I'm thinking the one scary fatality I guess most of us remember reading about was the guy who just smacked into a truck that ran in front of him. And I think the truck was white, and the robotic eye mistook the white for sunlight or something, or got confused by all the brightness, and the guy, well, it was a horrific accident. So I'm content to do my own driving now, even if I had, in a perfect world, I'd be more content to read a mystery novel or something while my robotic car was driving me on the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Always a pleasure, Jim.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. If you have any questions for us or our guests, they can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.